Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to the Forward Pinellas Board meeting. Please stand for the invocation and pledge led by Councilor Burke.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Lord, we thank you for the gift of life and for giving us another beautiful day. Thank you for the ability to assemble here to contemplate the issues facing our jurisdictions. We ask that you keep all of our citizens and all of our staffs at the town, city, and county levels safe and happy. Watch over this board, Lord, and grant us sound judgment and wisdom to serve our residents effectively. Amen. Please join me in the pledge. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you, everyone. And now we'll start down here with Councilor Burke. Would you all please introduce yourselves? Go ahead, Councilor.
Vice Mayor Chris Burke, City of Seminole, representing the inland communities.
Vice Mayor Patty Reed from the City of Pinellas Park.
Brian Scott, Pinellas County Commission, District 2.
Julie Ward-Bajolski, Mayor of this great city of Dunedin.
Vice Mayor Andrew Knapp, City of Oldsmar, representing Safety Harbor and Tarpon Springs.
David Will, Mayor, Reddington Beach, representing the beach communities.
Dave Eggers, Pinellas County Commission.
Dave Albritton, Council Member, City of Clearwater, and Ford Pinellas Treasurer.
Whit Planton, Executive Director.
And I'm Janet Long, County Commission, countywide, and I'm Chair of Forward Pinellas. All right, do we have, Tina, any citizens to be heard?
Yes, Madam Chair. David Ballard Geddes Jr.
Of course. Come on up, David.
Hi, good day. David Ballard Geddes Jr. I live on Georgia Avenue in Palm Harbor. Most of the problems the county faces today are problems it created. Making money, creating problems, hoping to double down and make even more money finding solutions, repairing the problems they created while systematically oppressing the residents in its process. The county has proactively manifested most, if not all, of its complications, hoping to give rise to its so-called reasonable, beneficial scheme of de facto government, initially using deliberate neglect and omission of reasonably foreseen expected duty of government, lack of efficiency and proper planning methods, neglecting sensibility and practicality in the designing of society, purposefully not preventing dilemmas in simple physics or geometric complications built up on legislative carelessness and inaction. Such inefficiencies in legislation serves as evidence of abusive political behavior, both coercive and deceptive in its nature. Recognizing such deliberate inefficiencies in government as having a political objective is evident in the very first sentence of Federalist Paper number 1. Eating us out of our subsistence in a long train of usurpations, the Declaration of Independence allows us to see the candid, cruel, and perfidious nature in government in hindsight, giving view to such star-spangled legislation as being none other than a ringbolt operation. A ringbolt operation hoping to give way through the night in the building of its ramparts as forwarded in the construct aboard the 14th Amendment, giving action to its own deliberate past inaction, capitalizing on our liberty, property, and life as due process claimed as self-evident. Thank you.
Tina, is there anyone else?
No, Madam Chair, there's not.
Thank you. Okay, now, do we have a presentation from the Forward Pinellas staff at this time?
We sure do. Yeah, we're going to feature Tina Jablon here today.
Look at you, Tina.
I've been here almost 10 years, and this is the first time I've got to see you all from this perspective. But this is a topic that's very near and dear to my heart, and so I wanted the opportunity to get before you and talk a little bit more about our fabulous staff. I don't know if all of you are aware, some of you probably are, that every year on President's Day, most of the appointing authorities throughout the county, they close to regular operations, they close to the public, and they do that to allow employees to have opportunity to do some team building and instruction or educational opportunities. At Forward Pinellas over the last several years, we use this day to get out into our community and put in some grit and grind, and we take on a community service project. We've worked with a variety of partners over the years, including the City of Oldsmar, Creative Pinellas, Habitat for Humanity, and Salty Souls. We've done beach cleanup and house building with Habitat, et cetera. This year, Council Member Driscoll, who's not here today, unfortunately, she made a recommendation that we look into working with the St. Pete Bike Co-op. And it was a perfect match for us. It's in line with the mission that we have here at Forward Pinellas. So our staff went out there and we worked in their little facility. The Bike Co-op, just so you're aware, it's a local nonprofit. It's completely run by volunteers, except for one staff member who was there with us that day. It's a little shop that is incredibly well organized, and they have all the tools, supplies, and everything necessary for citizens to come that need to maintain and repair their bicycles at no cost, and they even provide some instruction to do that. Additionally, they receive donated bikes, and they restore them to a usable quality, and they give them away. I think our slide says, I think they gave away 230 bikes last year. So we had the opportunity when we were there to, like I said, get a little dirty. They have a big storage container out in the back of the facility, and our staff worked unloading everything out of that storage container to resolve a mold issue that they were having and then reload everything into the facility. We also had the opportunity to work with that one gentleman, and we learned the process of what they do to strip and restore the bikes. We cleaned the shop. We organized some of their materials. The other thing that was a little bit unique this year was because of our volunteering that we did, we also were able to engage the St. Pete Bike Co-op at our Bike Your City event that we had on March 2nd. So they came out and volunteered for us in return and provided services in advance of the ride to anybody that needed some tune-ups on their bikes. So I'm very appreciative to Councilmember Driscoll for this recommendation. It worked well for us. Because others in the community are getting team building and educational opportunities throughout the county on that day, we were also personally invited to come and speak at the property appraiser's office so that we could educate their staff, which was, I think we had over 100 folks at that event. And Whit and Jared went and told them all things about Forward Pinellas, who we are, what we do, why we're important, and highlighted some of our ongoing and current projects. That's all I have for you today. What I will say is we are always looking forward to our next project, and I'm the one in the office that typically orchestrates this event. So if you have recommendations of other partnerships that might be valuable for us to do in the next year or two, you can let me know.
Thank you. Very well done, Tina. Appreciate all your hard work. And now we are on the consent agenda. Do any of the board members have any item to pull from consent? No?
Second.
It's been moved by Councilor Albritton and seconded by Councilor Scott. All those in favor, please designate by saying aye.
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 Any opposed? Okay, good. And now we are on our first public hearing item. So we're going to move into our Pinellas Planning Council public hearings, and they'll be conducted as follows. I will first ask Forward Pinellas staff to present the items. Applicant local governments are available for questions as needed. Once each presentation is given, I will then ask for proponents of the proposal to speak, then opponents, and finally, any other citizens who wish to comment or ask questions on the case. We'll then hear rebuttal by the applicant as necessary and a staff response or summary. At that time, the board will ask questions, and then I will close the public hearing, and the board will deliberate and take action. So right now, we're on item 6A1, case CW 24-05, the City of Tarpon Springs. Emma?
Yep, this is our first case today, first of 5, and it comes from Tarpon Springs. So the subject property is a 0.88 acre site located at 1201 Gulf Road. The existing countywide plan map category is retail and services. The proposed countywide plan map category is public, semi-public. It's currently vacant, and the proposed use is a new fire station. We have the subject area shown on a wide range map, as well as the jurisdictional map showing that it is within Tarpon Springs. Surrounding uses, it's surrounded by single family to the north there and commercial to the west, single family to the south, and then also single family to the east. This is showing the change in countywide plan map designation from retail and services to public, semi-public. It is within the coastal high hazard area. The current proposal is to correct an existing emergency services deficiency that primarily serves an existing residential area. The proposed public semi-public designation would be substantially lowering the allowable residential density on the countywide plan map category from 24 to 12.5 units per acre. So the max index score for the subject property is 2.5, which is below the countywide average of 9.7. However, the countywide rules does allow for consideration of other factors when determining if the requested amendment meets the relevant countywide considerations. And in this instance, in order to meet the balancing criteria requirements, the City of Tarpon Springs has cited the Sunset Connector Transportation Alternatives Project as a mitigating improvement. So a little bit more about that project. It is going through the first step of the project development process, so it is in design and construction will be programmed as funds become available. The project will result in a development and design that provides continuous bicycle and pedestrian facilities that are separated from general travel lanes, and it's depicted with the purple line shown in that graphic. The completion of this project will result in a max index score for the proposed amendment area grid cell that would be increasing. And then for this reason, as well as taking on the scale of the proposed project, Pinellas has determined that the countywide plan map amendment satisfies this consideration. So in conclusion, the public, semi-public category would be appropriate for the proposed use, and the property is consistent with the criteria for utilization of this category. It is within the coastal high hazard area. However, the requested amendment would lower the residential density on the countywide plan map. The max index score is a 2.5, which is below the countywide average. However, the Sunset Connector Transportation Alternative application would result in a max index score increase for the proposed amendment area. And therefore, staff finds the proposed amendment consistent and would recommend approval. Any questions?
Anybody? Tina, do we have anyone from the audience that wants to talk on this issue?
No, Madam Chair, we do not.
Okay. What is the pleasure of the board?
Move approval.
Been moved by Councilor Scott, seconded by Councilor Eggers. All those in favor, please designate by saying aye.
Aye.
Okay, the motion passes.
Okay, our second case today comes to us from Safety Harbor. It is a 0.82 acre site located at 675 Elm Street. The existing countywide plan map category is public, semi-public, and the proposed countywide plan map category is residential, low, medium. It is currently vacant, and the northern parcel is owned by the city, and the 3 parcels to the south are owned by Pinellas County School Board. In the future, Habitat for Humanity of Pinellas County will own all 4 parcels, and the purpose is for Habitat for Humanity homes. This image shows the location of the subject area as well as the jurisdictional map. Surrounding uses, there is a church immediately adjacent to the north, surrounded by a single family to the east and the south, and then vacant property to the west. This is showing the countywide plan map designations going to residential low medium from the public semi-public category. Max index score for this subject property's grid cell is 5.75, which is below the countywide average. However, per the countywide rules, an amendment to the countywide plan map that results in an increase of density or intensity within an underperforming grid cell must be evaluated. However, this amendment would result in a decrease in both density and intensity, therefore would be exempt from the max index criteria for an underperforming grid cell. Conclusion, the residential low-medium category is appropriate for the proposed use. The max index score is 5.75. However, the countywide plan map amendment results in a decrease in both density and intensity. The proposed amendment would not involve or significantly impact any of the remaining countywide considerations. Therefore, we find the proposed amendment consistent and would recommend approval. Any questions on this one?
Commissioner Eggers?
Any plan on how many units they're going to build here?
I actually don't have that number on hand, I don't believe. I can defer to the city for that one.
There's 6 parcels, right? I mean, at the end of the day, it looked like 6 parcels. Yes,
Marcy Stenmark, City of Safety Harbor, they plan to build 6 houses.
on the 6 parcels.
Yes.
Okay, thank you. Appreciate it. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Anyone else?
Move approval.
Okay. It's been moved and seconded. All
Who was
those
the
in
second,
favor?
please?
I'm sorry, Commissioner Scott.
Thank-
What?
No. I thought she just said who made the motion. I said I.
You made the motion, Commissioner Scott seconded it. Right? Okay, good. Okay. All those in favor, please designate by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Then the motion passes. Okay.
Okay, our third case today is also from Safety Harbor. It is a 5.07 acre site, and the property is located west of Elm Street and south of Cedar Street. The existing countywide plan map category is public, semi-public, and the proposed countywide plan map category is recreation open space. The subject property is owned by the Pinellas County School Board. The Safety Harbor Secondary School was located on the property until demolished in 2009, and the subject property is being conveyed to the City of Safety Harbor for future park use. The map showing the location of the site, as well as the jurisdictional map showing it is within Safety Harbor. So as you can see, this site is immediately adjacent to the properties that were just presented in the previous case. It's this large parcel that would be proposed for park use. It is surrounded by a single family, other than the church, which is towards the east there. So the change in countywide plan map designation going to recreation open space from public, semi-public. And again, the max index score for this grid cell is an average of 5.76, which is below the countywide average of 9.7. However, again, it would result in a decrease in both density and intensity, and therefore would be exempt from the max index criteria for an underperforming grid cell. The recreation open space category is appropriate for the proposed use of the property. And again, the max index score is 5.56. However, it would result in a decrease in both density and intensity. The proposed amendment does not involve or would not significantly impact the remaining countywide considerations. There was 3 public comments received, 2 in support and 1 in opposition, and it was noted that that was due to a noise concern from the park. Staff finds the proposed amendment consistent with the relevant countywide considerations and would recommend approval.
All right, Tina, do we have anyone from the public that wishes to speak on this issue?
No, Madam Chair, we do not.
Okay, good. Anyone on the board have any comments, questions, concerns? No? Then I'll entertain a motion.
Move approval?
It's been moved by Commissioner Scott and seconded by Councilor Burke. All those in favor, please designate by saying aye.
Aye.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, our next case comes from City of St. Petersburg. It is a 1.35 acre site. It is at the southeast corner of Hartford Street North and 32nd Avenue North. The existing countywide plan map category is residential medium. The proposed countywide plan map category is multimodal corridor. The purpose of the proposed amendment is to allow for multifamily housing that is affordable to the eligible citizens of City of St. Pete. The proposed amendment will locally allow for an increased workforce housing density bonus and utilization of either House Bill 1339 or Senate Bill 102 that will provide for increases in residential densities that mandate the inclusion of affordable housing. This graphic is showing the location of the site as well as the jurisdictional, that it's all in St. Pete. Surrounding uses, we have multifamily and single-family residential, as well as commercial and multifamily. To the east, to the south is a church, and then multifamily to the west. Countywide plan map designation, as you can see, it would be going to multimodal corridor from residential medium. This land use strategy map is showing the areas that have been identified to accommodate higher densities and intensities in coordination with transit and other transportation investments. The subject site is located approximately 200 feet from the 34th Street North, also known as State Road 19, which is a primary corridor and designated as a major roadway. So therefore, this area has been deemed appropriate to be considered a multimodal corridor pursuant to the requirements of the countywide rules. So as mentioned, the subject site is located approximately 200 feet from the 34th Street North corridor. The surrounding area is consistent with the locational characteristics for the proposed category. The proposed amendment is appropriate for the intended purpose, and it is consistent with the locational characteristics of multimodal corridor category. And staff finds the proposed amendment consistent and would recommend approval. Any questions?
Questions from the board? Anyone? Are there any proponents or opponents from the audience? Tina?
David Ballard Geddes Jr.
Of course.
David Ballard Geddes Jr. I live on Georgia Avenue in Palm Harbor. With all this overdevelopment that the county's going through, doesn't seem to be any slowdown in any of it. Do we have jobs in place for these people? Are we focused in on getting these people employed before we move them in? Do we have adequate roads? US 19 has a traffic jam 30 years long. Do we have enough water? What about toilet paper? Didn't we run out of toilet paper a couple of years back? Are we just going to continue to ignore the fact that complicating our problems here is not a solution-based legislative body? These other factors must be taken into consideration before you start building houses. Thank you.
Any questions, concerns, comments? Chris?
Just to correct the slide, it's US 19, not State Road 19.
I'm sorry, I can't hear you.
Just to correct the slide, it's on State, it says State Road 19, but it's US Highway 19.
Thank you.
Move approval.
It's been moved by Counselor Scott, second by Counselor Albritton. All those in favor, please designate by saying aye.
Aye.
Okay. Next.
Okay. Last case today is also from St. Petersburg. The subject property is a 5.24 acre site located at 7045 Burlington Avenue North, St. Petersburg, Florida. The existing countywide plan map category is public semi-public, and the proposed countywide plan map category is residential medium. The existing use is the St. Pete College Wellness Center, and the proposed use is workforce housing. So this slide is showing the proximity of the amendment area to the St. Petersburg College campus. The property has been owned and operated by St. Petersburg College since 1989 and has functioned as an accessory wellness center to the college campus. The city is under contract to purchase the site for the purpose of constructing 105 workforce housing units, and 30% of the units are to be made available to St. Petersburg College staff and students. It is the city's intent to redevelop the 5.24 acre site for multifamily is inconsistent with the current local future land use designation, so therefore the amendment to the countywide map to residential medium would be required. These maps are showing the location as well as the jurisdictional depiction showing it is within St. Petersburg. Surrounding uses, we have single family and multifamily directly north, and then also single family to the east and west. And then to the south, we have some boat RV storage as well as multifamily. Countywide plan map designation showing the change from public semi-public to residential medium. Conclusion, the residential medium category would be appropriate for the proposed use of the property of workforce housing, and the amendment does not involve or would not significantly impact the remaining countywide considerations. Therefore, staff finds the proposed amendment consistent and would recommend approval for this one as well. Is there any questions?
No? No questions, no concerns, no comments? Nothing from the audience, Tina?
No, Madam Chair, there's no one wishing to speak on this.
Okay. Excuse me, then I'll entertain a motion, please. It's been moved and seconded. All those in favor, please designate by saying aye. Aye. Any opposed? Okay.
Madam Chair, who made the motion? Thank you.
Commissioner Floyd.
It's the first time we've had 5 land use cases. Emma, you did a good job. You still have a voice.
Yeah, and we're zipping right through all of them. That's amazing. Must be the strength of the presentation, I'm thinking. All right, now we are on the PSTA report, and I believe Whit Blanton is going to give that report today.
Yes,
Whit?
I will. I'll keep it really brief. We did not get a report sent to us, but Councilmember Driscoll's unavailable to be here today. I did just want to highlight one item, and that is, instead of covering it in the legislative report, just to let you all know that the bill that was filed to revamp PSTA's governing structure was pulled in the Senate and didn't pass. It very likely will come back again next year, but I'm sure many of the communities that are represented by PSTA breathe a little sigh of relief. I know PSTA will continue to work with Representative Cheney and others to ensure that there's clear understanding of how they're operating and clarity of mission and objectives. And I'll just leave it at that in terms of the PSTA report, unless anybody has any questions for me. Or anybody else on the PSTA board wants to chime in.
Yeah, I was going to look at you. No, I meant your comments regarding the legislation that didn't pass.
You want to do your mic?
Yeah, that was the expected outcome, I think. I don't think it was a surprise, but I think some of the reforms that Representative Cheney was looking for, some performance metrics and some other things, I think might have made it through in a DOT bill.
They did.
So I think some of her objectives were met. So I think we'll just, and I know there's a town hall meeting coming up here, and was it the 25th, I think?
25th.
So I'm sure there'll probably be some discussion about that then as well. So we'll probably get a little more clear understanding of her thoughts on that date, I would think. So.
This is probably a pretty good time
Yeah,
to
I was
just talk
just
about the
gonna
town
say.
hall meeting real quick. I'm going to cover 34th Street a little bit separately, but since it's really prompted by PSTA's proposal to convert a portion of 34th Street South from 6 lanes into 4 lanes with a bus and turn lane for traffic, Representative Cheney has organized a town hall meeting on Monday, the 25th, from 6 to 8 p.m. at the St. Pete Beach Community Center, 7701 Boca Ciega Drive, St. Pete Beach. It'll be a panel discussion. I'll be on the panel along with the Florida Department of Transportation, Brad Miller from PSTA, and Evan Morey from the City of St. Petersburg. And we'll take questions. We'll explain the rationale behind the project, and then go from there. We are committed to meeting with the DOT, our partners at District 7, with the city, and with PSTA staff after that town hall meeting to discuss what are the next steps for 34th Street. The Florida Department of Transportation has determined that the red pavement will not happen with this project. If the bus and turn lane goes forward, it'll be marked with pavement markings and signage, but not with the red pavement that you have on the First Avenues for the Sunrunner project and portion of South Pasadena Avenue. And that is because of the cost. The cost of asphalt has risen dramatically, and what DOT is doing with all their construction projects is they're going through a value engineering process with the contractor to see where they can save money as the project is moving along. And that's true for every project, not just this one. And that's how they hope to keep the work program intact, because if they didn't do that, we would lose projects, not only in our district, but statewide. So we're not going to have the red pavement, but that's, as far as now, that's the only change. And then we'll regroup after the town hall meeting. Are there any questions about that?
It's interesting. Why is the town hall meeting in a municipality that is not, that the project's not taking place in?
I don't have an answer to that.
Yeah, that was my question.
So Representative Cheney scheduled the meeting, and that was probably just a location that she could get easily.
Okay.
We've had meetings at the Allstate Center before on 34th Street, so we have had meetings in the corridor, but this one's not that.
Could we do something like this in St. Pete? Like, I'd be happy to help organize it. Do you feel that that would be, could gather relevant feedback as well? It feels like, blatant politics out in the open. I'll say, like, you're hosting a town hall in a community that has shown negative opinions towards about bus lanes in a different community. It doesn't feel right. I'd love to do something that actually gets the people who are going to be impacted and live near this project to have a voice in it as well. So, do you think DOT would be interested in having another town hall like this in St. Pete, or do you feel that's even relevant to the conversation, or?
I think you're raising some good questions. I can certainly talk to FDOT with the city and with PSTA to see if we would be willing to do that. I guess I'd like to see if that's the direction that this board would like to see happen. I'm a little leery of dueling public forums.
Yeah, that's why I was asking. I don't know that it would be helpful or anything, but I definitely just want to make sure that, like, the voices of the people who actually live around the project are heard on this.
Understood.
Madam Chair?
Thank
Yes, Mayor.
It seems, I cannot speak for Representative Cheney, but I don't think Representative Cheney covers the 34th Street area.
She doesn't.
And so she's doing it in her own district. What I think what I think is the most logical, instead of having a second one and getting DOT, because really, we've done all our meetings that we're supposed to do from a Forward Pinellas perspective, right? Yep. Seems to me like maybe from Forward Pinellas, we should be asking, we should send a letter or something and ask Representative Cheney to partner with the representative from that area to do one in the area where it's affected if they're going to do one. It seems to be the logical thing to do. Now, whether that'll get any legs or not, but I'd be leery about asking DOT because we've done everything we're supposed to do. Now you're asking them to do a second one when it's not required. You know what I'm saying? What do you think, Brian?
I can't speak for where and when it got scheduled. So.
Well, you sit on PSTA, that's why I'm asking.
I just found out about this a couple of days ago, so.
So if you don't, you don't mind, I'd like to offer a suggestion that we could, for consideration. It seems to me that you used the word logical. Since it was Senator Roussan, I believe, that kept her bill from going. Spirit of collaboration might be a good idea for Representative Cheney to reach out to Senator Roussan and schedule the meeting in a district, as you say, Counselor, that impacts the people who are most logically going to be using the service. And so in that way, there might be an opportunity to mend some fences on a lot of different factoids going forward. Yes.
Yeah, I was just suggesting another meeting and asking sort of what people thought about that. I think the thing that, I don't want to say concerns me, but like perked my ears up a little bit was we're going to do this town hall and then we're going to regroup again and see what we think. And, you know, it's like we're going to go get input from a certain group of people and then use that input to make a decision, but that input is not actually based off of the people who live around the project. That's where I was getting concerned. And so, you know, I mean, if you could speak to that a little bit and just say like, you know, what that regrouping afterwards looks like. I mean, maybe that could just assuage my concerns right there.
Yeah, I mean, I think what I've talked about with FDOT and with the city of St. Petersburg is meeting with the Skyway Marina District as well, because they are the ones who really propelled this forward 5-6 years ago, and then they've had a change in their board. When the decision needed to be made, the Skyway Marina District was fully in favor. They incorporated it into their master plan that has not yet been updated. But they now have a brand new board that is now seeing all the development on 34th Street South, and they're getting concerned. So the board sent a letter a few months back to the city saying they no longer supported the bus and turn lanes. I met with Evan Morey yesterday, and he suggested that we go and meet with the Skyway Marina District and talk to them and explain, again, the project and the rationale for it. And what he said is what got them on board originally was having that detailed conversation of what they wanted for their community as well. So what I think sitting down and thinking it through entails is having additional conversations, but also making sure the partners who are integral to this project are still together. And there was a little question a couple of weeks ago at the PSTA board meeting whether one of our partners was still together. And I think that's something we need to just determine for sure.
Okay, that's reasonable. I appreciate that. You know, it's interesting. I've seen, you know, board neighborhoods, business district boards, they turn over. It's an interesting situation where they turn over and then oppose something that the previous one approved. I don't know how I don't know what you're thinking, planning on how you plan on navigating that, but I think it's going to be tricky, like as a precedent going forward as well. Like to say, you know, if you change your mind, you know, what does that look like? How do we get anything done if boards turn over and people change their mind?
Well, I think if I can just jump in for a second, I think there's a precedent here, which is in the city of Clearwater with our Drew Street project. That was initiated by the neighborhood adjacent to Drew Street, but we're not going to the neighborhood and asking them to vote about it. We're asking the city of Clearwater City Council to vote about it. So I think for 34th Street, ultimately, this will come back, regardless of the Skyway Marina District's position, to City Council.
Okay.
And if the mayor and City Council are still on board with the project, I think that's going to be an important factor.
Okay, all right. All right, well, I thank you for explaining that. You made me feel a lot better. Thanks.
Any other questions?
Or not.
I think Mayor Will has a question.
Yeah, Mayor?
I just wanted to make a comment to Commissioner Floyd's point. I understand the residents of the city of St. Pete Beach don't live right next to the project, but they utilize that corridor. So I believe it's important to get information from the people who are utilizing that corridor along with the people who live in that corridor. So I don't think it's, I don't think you can have too much input.
Yep, that's a good point.
Could I add to that? I mean, I agree completely with you in that respect. I just, I don't know what, and some of this is a question about like, you know, to what degree we do these types of things, because I mean, there's people who use that corridor who live in Sarasota and Manatee counties as well and live north, and so I just was, haven't seen anything like this particular thing before, and so I just wondered what the extent to which we do this is, and you know, how much are those voices prioritized versus, yeah, people who live there, but other people who use it as well.
We will keep you updated, have conversations.
Commissioner Eggers, you had something?
Yeah, I guess. Just listening to the conversation. You know, this is a, you know, our process, and I think you're going to discuss public engagement policy discussion later about when we're in a business of not only long-range planning, but even a 5-year plan, and discussions about things that enter into a 5-year plan happen before that.
Yep.
So as we can start having a public discussion and have one, and then we've talked about what I mean by public discussion, 8 years sometimes before. So it, to me, readdressing things along the way and solidifying things that we've kind of, is a good thing to do. Because things do change. I'm sorry. Life goes on, the world changes, people change, and uses of and other projects about taking a lane and doing this with it also come into play, and experiences you have with it. I don't have a problem with it. I don't think this project has been over publicly discussed at all, in my opinion, and I don't think it's wrong to have it. I do agree to have it in the area. I think makes more sense. You know, gets folks that live there, work there, drive through there, and expand it a little bit. But, you know, again, I think it's a good thing to be re-engaging with people before we start spending money on something that may no longer be wanted or cared for or anything. So,
you said the magic word before we start spending money. This project is under construction. So. All right, thank you.
Commissioner
is there
Scott.
one more?
Yeah, I just want to make clear that this is Linda's meeting. It's not Representative Cheney's meeting. It's not a Forward Pinellas meeting. She put this meeting together and invited WIT and Brad and DOT to come to the table for public input, and it's in her district. I think it would be great if Senator Roussan wanted to do one down in the Skyway Marina District, but I just want to point that out. It's not Forward Pinellas leading this charge. This is Representative Cheney. So.
Absolutely.
What does construction started mean?
They have built the sidewalks that we asked them to build. They have installed one signal. It's not operational yet. There is continuing work out there. The asphalt has not been stripped and relayed, so that piece of it concerning the lane repurposing is yet to occur. So
I think that's the controversial piece.
Yeah.
It's not the sidewalks. It's not a light. It's what to do with that lane, and it's restriping and all that kind of thing. I mean, you know, that's the last piece to it. So
it is. Okay. All right. Well, thank you very much for your discussion about this, and we'll keep you posted on it.
All right. If there's nothing else from the board, I think we're at the director's report.
Well, regional activities is next, and I'll cover that one as well. This one's got a little bit of substance to it. I wanted to draw your attention to a document that's in there, but before that, on February 26th or 16th, we met at the TMA leadership group, and I think had a really productive discussion at the airport among Pasco and Hillsborough and Pinellas representatives about the potential for the governing board structure of a new regional MPO serving our area. And I think we pretty much found consensus on the role of the transportation operators, the regional transportation operators, specifically who was a regional operator and who wasn't, and should they come out of Hillsborough's allocation of seats, or should they be off the top? And I'm speaking of the Port Authority, Port Tampa Bay, and the Airport Authority, or the Aviation Authority, which is Tampa International Airport, and a couple of other airports. And the general consensus was that they are regional entities. They should not come out of the Hillsborough allocation from population, so long as the representative of those entities is a staff member, CEO or designee, and not an elected official, because their board is only comprised of Hillsborough representatives on both those boards. And there was some discussion about, well, maybe we should revisit the statute that governs their governing board and request that it as a condition of their sitting on a regional MPO as a voting member, that they would have that board have some Pinellas and Pasco representation as well. I don't know if we got consensus on that, but at least that discussion occurred. And I think Commissioner Eggers may have brought that one up. The next meeting is May 14th or 15th, I forget exactly, I think it's the 14th. And we will be discussing the role of the transit operators, HART and PSTA in particular, on that governing board. And then in the fall, we will be discussing the role of the smaller cities in Pinellas County. So this kind of step process of how we could look at that governing board. The document that I wanted to draw your attention to that the TMA leadership group unanimously endorsed is a statement on passenger rail in the I-4 corridor, and I'll spare reading it to you, I won't, but the document calls, per the direction of this board, to encourage Brightline to build a new segment from Tampa to, or from Orlando to Tampa. But the statement is a little broader because it also includes the expansion of Amtrak service in the same corridor. And the rationale for that was when we met with Amtrak officials to talk about passenger rail last year, Amtrak said that they see themselves as a very different market than Brightline, a different price point, a different service level, a different frequency, number of stops, all those things make them a different service in their mind. I don't know that they would be able to utilize the Brightline tracks. That might trigger some other kind of federal obligations, but there's already Amtrak service in the corridor. It's just not very frequent and not very regular. There's also been a proposal by the Federal Railroad Administration to introduce a new service from the Chicago area to Florida down to Miami. And you may have read the news reports that it does not appear to touch Tampa. So addressing transit in the I-4 corridor would also give us the ability to work with Amtrak and FRA officials to bring that service to Tampa's Union Station or some other appropriate location to tie in with Brightline and existing Amtrak service. So it's a mouthful, but what I would like to do is see if this board is willing to endorse this statement or with any modifications to this statement today. And our goal is to get all the other 9 MPOs along the I-4 corridor to endorse the statement as well. And I've already heard from some of those MPOs that they're very much in favor, and several of them said this is already a statement that they essentially have, but it would be formalizing it with consistent shared language, which as we're adopting our long-range plan, I think is important. So I would ask for consideration of that today.
I just wanted to comment back on the first point, which was the breakdown. We're talking about having 25 members on that board, of which if you take 2 off, that's 23. And the way they had the splits at that point, Pasco and Pinellas could have more votes than Hillsborough County unless you count those 2 votes. So it was important to understand not only that our our potential representation on those individual boards, but also kind of the, like, are the two ports butter, you know, what was the saying? Butter? Yeah, no, how is their bread buttered? In other words, sorry, yeah, yeah, bread buttered. In other words, how much money do these ports get from Hillsborough County in their overall scheme? So that, what influence does that have on this regional entity? And so that's what I wanted to know more about before we just give two off the top for true regionalism.
Right.
So, and if it's true regionalism, then it'll be virtually nothing, and or put representation from Pasco and Pinellas. So, either way, it was simply about trying to be more pure in the process, and I think that was important. So,
Very good point. Thank you for that additional clarity. We don't have that information yet, but I hope to have that in the next month or two.
But to Commissioner Egger's comments, seems to me it would be wise for us to do a little research into other areas of the country that have dealt with these same kind of problems, and then not necessarily have to reinvent the wheel on everything we're doing going forward, because there's got to be some great models out there that have worked really, really well.
I was impressed that we got where we did, frankly, in our discussion at that meeting. It's just tightening up a little bit on votes that will be coming down the road on anything, making sure that it's not stacked in any one favor. And that's really what we're trying to do, just make sure that those two regional things, those two regional positions are truly have that regional mentality and not a Hillsborough-centric mentality.
Yeah, and just to clarify, there are other regional, theoretically, operators. Tampa-Hillsborough Expressway Authority only functions in Hillsborough County right now, but their legislation allows them to operate in the other two counties if they are invited in to do a study or undertake a project in those two counties. And I think, you know, we can revisit that if and when that occurs. So there was some discussion about that entity. We generally don't think the school boards are regional. We don't, and there is a seat for the school board on the Hillsborough TPO. So the next discussion will be with the transit operators, and that'll be interesting too, because that'll inform other aspects of the governing board. If you have a transit provider, you can adjust the number of county commissioners if you have that transit provider voting on your board or if you don't. And in Hillsborough's case, their transit provider, Hart, the voting member on the board is a staff person. Here in our case, it's Councilmember Driscoll, who's an elected official. So when we get to a merger, we're going to have to work through some of those issues so that there's consistency. And I know Mayor, I'm drawing a blank on his name, from Temple Terrace, Mayor Ross, will not be at our next meeting, so we wanted to hold off the small cities discussion until he could be there in September, so that'll happen in September.
And he was certainly, he has been a refreshing voice.
He's been great.
On the three-member from Hillsborough County.
Absolutely. Other questions, comments, I think?
Yeah, I was just hoping, I feel like you kind of glossed over it, and we're like, you know, we said we wanted Pinellas and Pasco representation on those, I think it was the Port Authority and the airport. You glossed over what the feedback was like on that. I just wondered if you could.
I don't think we really got into much of a discussion about it. I think the question that Commissioner Eggers raised of how are they funded, you know, because if there's a financial implication of being on that board, then, you know, that's a further conversation we're going to have. So I don't know the answer to that, and we'll get the answer to that. So I think that's kind of where it ended.
All right. Everything's cursory, like nothing, but I just wondered if there would be like outright, like, oh, like no.
No,
it doesn't sound like that.
I think the concern was, well, we would have to open up the statute. And my response to that was, we're going to have to open up the statute because this body, the Pinellas Planning Council portion of this body, has statute reference as the governing board being the same as the MPO. So, you know, we're going to have to change that statutory reference because I don't think we want our land use cases heard by MPO members in other counties.
Yeah.
So, you know, so we're going to have to open up the statute.
And as I recall, Counselor, it wasn't so much a discussion as just a thought that was put out there, and then it kind of lingered. there wasn't a lot of people weighing in on it,
Yeah,
right?
that's right.
Yeah, I mean, if there was a significant funding from Hillsborough County, then they could pick the airport as one of their own representatives and not take it off the top. That was the difference. And so we just wanted to get at that rationale, because there's no one county in a regional effort that should be able to just all vote one way and carry a vote. If Pasco and Pinellas were totally adamantly opposed to something, then it should not pass. And so that extra 2 votes were really critical to understand. And, you know, we just want to make sure that there's balance in this organization moving forward, so. Otherwise, it becomes kind of a moot point to even think about it, so.
I think if you watch the Hillsborough TPO meetings or attend those meetings, there is an interesting dynamic where when there are close votes on regional projects, those regional entities kind of carry the day. And that's caused some angst in the city of Tampa, that they're not accountable, they're not elected officials. I can't go get a meeting with the CEO of the Port Authority if I'm a regular citizen. It is going to be something interesting to work through. We don't have that issue here. Every one of you are elected. So over there, it's just a different dynamic that has, I'll just say, created some tension at times.
And it has come up in our TMA discussion as well because of that, but I think it's more of in-house issues that they have between Tampa and Hillsborough that they need to iron out, so that their representation, whatever that number is, includes enough Tampa people, city of Tampa people. Because they don't want, they actually have one of those veto powers on this whole merger thing, so they have to be brought along in that discussion anyway. It should have no bearing on the overall numbers, but rather the mix of their group, Hillsborough County. We'll see.
Anything else on that item? I am looking for an action, if there's desire.
What are the wishes of the board on this issue?
About the revised draft, March 5th, 2024.
The passenger rail statement for the I-4 corridor, yes, sir.
A vote, a consensus.
A motion to support the statement and encourage other MPOs to endorse the statement as well.
Second.
It's been,
Albritton and Reed,
Yeah.
Floyd? Okay.
yeah, it's been moved and seconded. All those in favor, please designate by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Okay, done.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Chairwoman,
Yes, ma'am.
Tina was just nice enough to send us the agenda for that meeting with Representative Cheney. Sent it to all of us, if anybody wants to take a look at it. It says, it looks like it says you and PSTA are working together on presentations there.
Yes, yes.
When it says State Road 580 to Oldsmar to Tampa, is that Skinner Road that you're going to be talking about?
No.
Because I'm about to have a cow if you are, because construction's going to start in a couple months.
Yeah, and why are they talking about that in St. Pete Beach?
Well, this is why
That's
I'm bringing
kind of-
it up right this second.
Thank you.
They're talking about Alt 19 Tyrone, Corridor Tyrone, long-term plan. And it's underneath a overall heading of discussion of lane repurposing. Alt 19 Corridor at Tyrone, Roosevelt East Bay Corridor, 4th Street Corridor, Dunedin State Road 580 to Oldsmar to Tampa, and 60 Corridor to Tampa. I mean, the only lane repurposing that I'm aware of at this very moment on 580 is a lane reduction. It's not repurposing, but it is a lane reduction that has been approved and approved and approved for the last 4 years. So,
Yeah, the only other repurposing that there's been discussed was, and I suggested just do it temporarily during rush hour, was from Belcher Road to US 19, eastbound,
yeah, that
on
right
the
turn.
right lane.
Right, no,
Make
and
it-
I totally agree with
Yeah,
you.
that would have been somewhat of a repurposing, only because it
Totally
backs
agree
up
with you
and
on
gets
that.
into, all the way to Belcher
I know,
sometimes.
it stinks.
But that was a repurpose, that's part of that overall 580.
Right, and that has
Isn't
nothing to
that
do with
right?
transit. There's nothing to do with transit.
Well, no, talk about lane repurposing.
Right.
So they are doing that in Skinner Boulevard, and they are doing the discussion on that 580 piece. So I don't know what they're talking about in the agenda.
Yeah, I don't know. I haven't seen this before until now. I think that there's a perception out there that there's all these other corridors that we're looking to do lane repurposing, and I think we've tried to be as clear as we can. That's not true.
Yeah.
There is no plan for any other lane
Yeah.
repurposing.
Reduction maybe, but not
No,
repurposing.
well,
for us, it's a piece of it's getting reduced.
It's still considered a repurposing, but that is a project that's gone through the process. You're right, for a small section of Skinner in the city of Dunedin.
Well, that's why I'm concerned now that I see that on there.
Yeah. But this would say Dunedin State Road 580 to Oldsmar to Tampa, so I
Right.
don't even know what that is.
I don't either.
Yeah.
Well, apparently you and Brad are giving a presentation on it.
Well, my understanding was, yeah, where's Evan Morey from St. Petersburg and FDOT? We'll see.
Yeah.
We'll have to talk.
Okay.
Anyway, looks like we'll have a lot of surprises here.
Okay. Now are we on item 7, the draft unified planning work program?
It's the Housing Action Plan, I believe, is next. 7C.
Oh,
And Linda Fisher will do that.
Linda. Hello.
Thank you. So this is our latest update to the board on the implementation of the Housing Action Plan. And as a reminder, this effort is being jointly led by Forward Pinellas and Pinellas County, along with our local government partners. But this board is the entity that's overseeing the plan. We've committed to come before you every other month with an update on implementation. And some of these updates will be progress reports on projects that we're working on. Some will be presentations from local partners or stakeholders, and some will be informational briefings on topics that you've told us that you want to know more about. And this month, we're going to talk about housing for senior residents. One of the goals of the Housing Action Plan is to ensure that we have housing that is accessible and affordable to residents of all ages and abilities, including our senior residents. But why do we need to focus on seniors?
Linda?
Yes.
I'm sorry, I didn't see affordable in there. I just want to make sure I'm clear. It looked like it was accessible. Are you implying with accessible that means affordable, or is that what that?
Yes, so this is part of a larger framework of housing goals that are affordable to people of a range of incomes, and then this is a subset of that.
Okay. I just didn't see the word, so thank you.
Okay. The senior population has a lot of unique needs for the physical characteristics and location of housing. They're becoming a much larger segment of the population due to the baby boomers aging. They face unique economic challenges, and ensuring that seniors have safe housing that's affordable brings other benefits. So I'm going to go into each one of these in just a little more detail. So what unique housing needs do seniors have? I don't want to paint an entire population with a broad brush, since there's a wide variety of ages and physical abilities among older adults. But on average, there is a higher percentage of senior residents who have physical and medical challenges, and they need housing that's designed to be safe and accessible. Upkeep of property and yards can be a physical challenge, so smaller homes and alternatives like shared courtyards can be beneficial. Many seniors rely on family or other caregivers to help them, so it's beneficial to offer options for family members to live near each other, like accessory dwelling units. And it's important for senior housing to be located within easy access of the services that they need. So we need more housing that meets these needs because our population of senior residents is growing very fast. Residents aged 65 and older are expected to grow by 28% by 2050 in Pinellas. That's a much larger increase than either working age adults or children. Some of this is from in-migration. Even though the cost of living has increased here, Florida is still the top state where people are moving to in retirement, including moving to Pinellas County. And we also have a large population of current residents who are either seniors already or who are approaching that phase of life, and we're all getting older. By 2050, the percentage of residents who are 80 and older is expected to double. And the senior population faces a lot of economic headwinds. Locally, we've seen housing prices skyrocket. Now, we've also seen incomes for working age residents increase to partially compensate for that. But for seniors who depend on Social Security or pensions, those increases have not been as large. So they're being outcompeted for things like the cost of rent. For those who do own their homes, they're facing the same escalating insurance premiums that we're all seeing. Maintenance assessments for older condominiums are another big issue. In the wake of the Champlain Towers collapse in 2021, those costs have increased dramatically. Seniors are facing all of these increasing housing costs on fixed incomes, and at a time in their life when they're also facing increasing medical costs and the cost of assistive services.
Linda? Those 6 bottom bullets or whatever, they're really for all of us, all ages are going through that.
Yes.
And the fixed income piece for seniors, I'm not diminishing that some folks are on that, but some of them are asset-based at that time in their life. They don't make as much money, but their assets are pretty large. And they've accumulated. There's some that are just on fixed income with no asset support. So I get that. But all those other issues that are inflation, high cost of medical, it really is across the board.
Right, and the point is that we're all facing these challenges, but for senior residents, the challenge may be even greater because of their fixed incomes and the fact that their medical costs are disproportionately higher than everyone else's.
Thank you.
So this is an issue that we need to face, but the good news is that planning for senior housing brings a lot of benefits. Ensuring that older residents have safe, stable housing increases their health and well-being, reduces medical and social services costs, and allows them to remain independent for a longer period of time and to continue contributing to the community. It also benefits those of us who have senior relatives in our lives, and of course, nearly all of us will eventually be seniors ourselves. So let's talk about the different types of senior housing that exist. There's a spectrum from the most independence to the highest level of care. On the independent side, many seniors opt to age in place in homes that they own or rent for as long as possible. A step up from that would be accessory dwelling units, where seniors can live independently but on the same property as family members. There are age-restricted communities that are designed for seniors. We have a lot of 55-plus condos and such in Pinellas. There's supportive senior housing that are mostly independent, but where some services are offered, like cooking and cleaning. Residential health facilities, where residents receive more direct supervision and care, like assisted living facilities, memory care, and nursing homes. And then there are continuing care retirement communities, which offer a variety of those different care options on a single campus, so a resident can move up through the different levels of care as the need arises. So we need to think about providing enough quantity of senior housing, but also enough different types to meet that spectrum of needs. And we need to keep in mind the location of that housing and proximity to supportive uses. Senior households have a much higher prevalence of not being able to drive, but like everyone else, they still need to get to the grocery store and the doctor and so forth. So it's important to have transit available whenever possible. And to provide infrastructure for safe walking and biking, both for transportation and to encourage exercise. And many of those things benefit the entire community. But what does this mean from a regulatory perspective? What can we do to help encourage more housing that meets the needs of seniors? Well, we've talked to a few developers who build senior housing, and these are the things we heard. To begin with, the need is similar to what we hear for affordable housing generally. In order for these projects to be financially feasible, we need to allow higher densities. And that's true whether we're talking about regular residential use, which is measured in units per acre, or what we call residential equivalent uses like assisted living facilities, which is measured in beds per acre. As an example, a typical senior affordable housing apartment complex on a major corridor would need to allow for at least 50 units an acre. And that reflects the fact that seniors typically have smaller households and smaller than average units. Larger developments, particularly continuing care retirement communities, need to be able to provide a diverse mix of uses. They include a mix of residential and residential equivalent uses, doctor's offices, recreational facilities, Some incorporate educational facilities for their medical staff and even housing for employees. And some go even further and provide a town center to provide a place for residents to walk to and get exercise. But it's difficult to find land use categories that allow all those uses together at the densities and intensities that are needed to make these projects happen. Senior housing developments also don't need as much parking. For an apartment complex, parking requirements typically work out to 1 off-street space per bedroom, but a senior complex can get away with half that much parking or even less. And that's, again, because many seniors don't drive and don't own cars. They may have family members who give them rides or use drop-off and pickup services. And that's another big reason why these developments tend to have higher densities. But it also means they have lower traffic impacts relative to that density. And that's particularly true when there's robust transit and the ability to walk to destinations. Another way to increase the supply of senior housing is to require or incentivize new development to use universal design. So designing homes with wide enough passages to accommodate wheelchairs and walkers, providing alternatives to steps, slip-resistant floors, grab bars. Those elements aren't intrusive for people who don't need them, but they can be literal lifesavers for those who do. So building homes with universal design makes it easier and safer for senior residents to age in place, and it also helps people of any age who have mobility challenges. Now, we did take some steps in the countywide rules a few years ago to try to address some of these issues. We created a senior housing bonus, which allows local governments to provide additional density or intensity for these developments. There's a requirement that they need to be designed to promote walkability, and they can't be located in the coastal high hazard area. Other than that, it's pretty open-ended, but as far as we know, no local government has used this bonus. So one of our goals as we implement the Housing Action Plan is to make changes to the countywide rules to make them more useful. We also know that messaging is important. We need to help the community understand why we need more senior housing that's safe and affordable. Now, fortunately, we don't have to do any of this by ourselves. As I was preparing for this presentation, I learned that the Area Agency on Aging of Pasco and Pinellas is also looking at these same issues in partnership with the Pinellas Community Foundation. And they've convened a roundtable group of developers and housing planners. And now we're linked up with their effort so we can help and amplify each other's work. Another effort that we're linked up with is the Bay Pines Housing Collaborative. That's a product of the Bay Pines Community Veterans Engagement Board and the Homeless Empowerment Program in Clearwater. And this effort is aimed at veterans who need housing, but a large portion of that population is seniors. So again, there's a lot of overlap in our mission, so now we're working with them as well. And we'll be touching on senior housing needs in each of the 4 implementation projects that we're working on this year. We're working on a regulatory toolkit to create model regulations and incentives, housing communications campaign to educate the community, a countywide housing target study to better understand our housing needs, and a collection of online mapping and analysis tools to help guide local decision-making. So there is lots more to come. That is my presentation. If there are any questions, I'll be happy to answer them.
Questions or concerns from anybody from the board? Commissioner Eggers?
So are we learning about the baby booming generation in terms of demographics and financial capabilities? And I think about the normal downsizing that goes on. That folks just don't want as much house. Forget what any other issues. So it's opening up housing. So the housing crisis that we have might be backfilled with some of the apartments that folks were not able to battle on fair grounds for those housing at one time, but now as they start to, and I don't, the impact, you're talking about a large group of people that are aging for different reasons. They have different needs. It's not just one type of need. So I just think there's going to be naturally more housing availability for different generations. Mm-hmm. So it's a matter of making sure that whether it's the private sector finding models that work for seniors. And it's just, so I think there's some government involvement, but there's a lot of private sector stuff too.
Sure, sure. And when we talk about creating regulations and incentives, that is for the private sector to meet that need. But part of what we're doing with the countywide housing target study is looking at that age demographic and how that's changing the housing market. So that speaks to your point.
Commissioner Scott?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Do we have a sense of what inventory we currently have for senior housing in terms of number of beds and what we think that we're going to need by 2050, and how distinctly different is senior housing from the regular affordable types of housing that we talk about and approve funding for?
That's part of what we're looking at through again, the countywide housing target study, and then our larger implementation efforts as we work with these other groups who are specializing in senior housing. So we don't have that picture today, but we are working on it.
Okay. All right. Thank you.
Councilor Albritton?
Yeah, it's an interesting subject because we've talked about it a lot in Clearwater on how we can change our codes to be more receptive to ADUs and things like that, where people, you know, I mean, they used to do that. A lot of the older homes, like in some of the older neighborhoods, kind of had those accessory dwelling units that people would live in, and I know Dunedin has it, and I think we're going to have to go to something like that. I really do. We're talking about changing codes to be able to allow that, not only for the elder generation, but just more dwelling units for people, affordable dwelling units. So I think it's a good thing.
Madam Chairwoman?
Yes.
So we did add that. Commissioner Eggers, I think, was there when we did the accessory dwelling unit. And back in that day, you didn't have the Airbnb stuff, you know. Yeah, back in our younger days. But stop. You're nice. But we still made sure that our accessory dwelling units were a relative, because what was happening was during the recession, you know, 08, 09, 10, that time frame, and a lot of young people were moving back home if they were in college, or they were out of college, couldn't make it, so they were moving home to go back and get their masters. And then you had a lot of parents moving in with their kids. And so we made it to where you had to be a relative and prove that. And we've had very little movement on it. There's been some, but very little. When you don't put those caveats, then it goes crazy to the rental market of Airbnb, depending on what your city's thing. So it's unfortunate because it's not being utilized in what you would hope it would be. It's not, it has to be very carefully thought through, depending on where it is in your city, what your city's zoning laws are, and that kind of thing.
So do you think that's a culture issue?
Yeah, I do. I think property prices are so expensive right now that people want, if they're going to have a piece of property and they have the opportunity to make rental income, they're going to do it. If they're buying it outright, that's what they're looking for. If they've owned the property a long time, and as you know, we've seen a lot of turnover in that, people that have moved away, then I think, yes, they do have their kids move home or they have their parents move home. But it's just a small segment.
Yeah.
Just small.
And construction costs are so out of control that just to build a small unit is per square foot prices are through the roof.
Yeah, and my husband is in construction. He's like, I can't go out and buy a 2x4 without breaking $100. I mean, he's exaggerating, but he's not far from it.
Yeah, and if you had your son come in, what kind of rent are you going to charge him? Not much.
Not much.
So if it's somebody that you don't know, you'll
Right.
get that $2,000 a month rent. And
So I think ADUs were great when we did them. I think they served the purpose when we did them. I don't think anybody's using them for what we would like to see them for now, like they are in other states.
That's the number one concern that we hear when we talk about ADUs, is how to stop them from turning into Airbnbs. Unfortunately, we are challenged by that issue in Florida, but the prevailing advice is to offer something like an impact fee waiver, and then in return, you can have the property owner sign a contract, a binding contract, that they won't use the property as a vacation rental.
And I think in Dunedin, we had different areas. There was residential tourism and residential, just regular residential. And we took advantage of the grandfathering so that and it's still hard, even with that said, it's hard to enforce. It's like, where are these homes? So,
And that's the problem, is enforcement. Yeah, you can get all the contract signed you want, but if you don't have an over-bloated, and I say over, but a large code compliance department, people are getting away with all of it because you just don't have, and especially if you have a code compliance department that relies solely on reports, because as you know, you have to give your name now. So it's just, there's just a lot of complication to it.
There are a lot of challenges, and that's why we are coming together in this countywide effort, so that it's not 25 local governments having to navigate these issues independently, so we can come together and pool our resources and best practices and try to help everyone.
I do want to point out that when it comes to transportation impact fees or other impact fees, there are provisions to address those for affordable housing, and you can do that. But generally speaking, if you're going to lower impact fees, you've got to pay them down. Although, there is data showing that for affordable housing, people make fewer trips, they have lower car ownership, so there's a technical justification as well. So it's hard just to waive impact fees. That's not legal. Thank you, Linda. I had a question for you. Next up is going to be maybe the unveiling of the communications strategy. Do you have a timeline about when that might be coming back to this board?
We are hoping to bring that to you in May.
Okay, very good.
Thank you.
So now the draft unified planning work program?
Yes, it's the most exciting presentation you're going to get all day long. All right. All right, so the Unified Planning Work Program, this document is a federal and state requirement. It documents our transportation planning funding. Rodney's been up here a few times talking to you about our budget. However, as you're all aware, we both have a transportation side of the house and a land use side of the house. And our transportation side, as the Metropolitan Planning Organization, or MPO, we are funded with federal grants on a reimbursement basis. So after every quarter, we basically have to submit a report up to the state and federal government and document how we spent our funds. And they check the UPWP to make sure that we're spending funds the way that we said we were going to. It's kind of a checks and balances. So we adopt a new plan every 2 years. The current plan was adopted in 2022, and it expires July 1st of this current year. June 30th of this current year. So the ones that we're adopting now will cover July 1st, 2024 through June 30th, 2026. This is just a little bit of an overview of the timeline. We presented this to our committees last month. This is your first look at the draft. It will be sent up to the review agencies on Friday, and they will have a few weeks to take a look at it, give us any comments, make sure everything kind of checks all the boxes, and then they'll come back to you for final adoption in May. And then July 1st, our work on that next work program will begin. This identifies really the funding sources. The vast majority of the funding that we get here at Ford Pinellas as the MPO comes from federal funds. There is a small amount of transit and transportation disadvantage funds that are mixed in there, but overwhelmingly it's from the Surface Transportation Block Grant Program to be used for planning activities. We do break our UPWP up into various tasks. So each day when our staff goes in and they work on their timesheet, they'll say, okay, I spent about 20% of my time on this task, about 40% on this, and it really just helps us keep track of all the different projects we're spending our planning time on. These are the various tasks that we have included. In your packet, you have a very, very high-level summary of some of these tasks. You have all of the tables that explain our planning documents, and then you also have a high-level summary of the funding tables. When you see the final, it's probably going to be, I'd say, 60, 70 pages. It's a pretty big document when you get the final in May. We're still working towards that. But these are the different tasks that we split our time up through. Overall, it's about $5.2 million that we have in planning funds, and this slide just shows kind of how that's broken out. About $2.5 million are our personnel. We have just under $1 million in direct expenses, a little bit of money in travel, about $24,000, and then about $1.7 million for consultants. And I'm going to walk through each of those tasks with you and let you know where that funding is projected to go. So first is our program administration. Generally, we like to keep this one pretty lean. We don't like to spend a lot of time in just admin. We like to spend our time planning. However, this does capture all of our direct expenses. This includes our rent, our insurance, our computers. It is a bit higher now than it has been in the past because, as some of you may be aware, we received a grant 8 or 9 years ago to purchase bicycle and pedestrian counters, and we send you a report each month in your committee packets. Those counters are starting to drop like flies. They're getting older, they are in need of replacement, so we have budgeted some funding to be able to purchase additional counters and also replace the ones that we have out there now. This task also includes our work on our annual certification, the administrative support to this board here, and also we have made the decision to purchase additional safety equipment. When we go out and we talk to the public, we like to be able to also provide them with bike lights should they need them, or bike bells. We've been working to give out helmets as well, so all of that is covered under this task. Yes, sir.
Question. The bike and ped counters, are those only on the Pinellas Trail, or do we have them elsewhere in the county?
Currently, they are only on the Pinellas Trail. What we are looking to do is when we purchase additional ones, we'd also like to get a portable one so we can do spot counts at different locations as needed.
The Florida Department of Transportation has a counter on the Courtney Campbell Causeway. So these are, she's talking about our counters that we maintain.
Got it. Do we get any information from those ones on the Causeway?
We can, we sure do, yeah.
Okay.
We don't summarize them every month for your packet because it's not our data, but
Right.
we certainly can get those counts.
Yeah. Okay.
And the city of St. Petersburg also has a few counters that we've been in conversations with them about taking over. And the Florida Department of Transportation is also putting another counter on the North Bay Trail near Vinoy Park. So we'll be able to get all the data from those as well. Our second task is public participation. This is overwhelmingly personnel costs. However, there is a small amount of funding for consultant on an as-needed basis. The consultants here help us maintain our website, develop graphics, and other small items that come up over time, but we do bill against that kind of on an as-needed basis. Our system monitoring, this has a pretty substantial consultant fee. So you'll see a bit in there for our personnel costs. This really covers our crash data monitoring program, our traffic count program. We do not do our traffic counts in-house. We contract those out. Our level of service calculation databases that we maintain. And this we increased a bit because we are approached on a very regular basis by a lot of different vendors trying to sell us the best, latest and greatest bits of data. And they all seem to do something a little bit different and only they can do it. But the data is incredibly expensive. A lot of our consultants already have access to some of these data products. So we made the decision, instead of purchasing it ourselves, we would leverage our consultants that we have on call to gather any data that we may need on an as-needed basis, and instead of just purchasing some very expensive platform that we might not use enough to get what we think we should out of that cost. Our systems planning is one of our larger ones. This includes pretty much everything you could possibly think of when it comes to transportation planning. Some of the things that we've added for the next 2 years that we'd like to focus on is consideration of trail crossing signal technology. There are some new signals out there that have either a bicycle or a pedestrian phase. So if you're coming up as a pedestrian, you would push the pedestrian button and the signal would actually go for a longer duration than if you were on a bicycle. So there may be some applications that we'd like to look into in that. Our trail counting system plan. We've also committed to doing before and after studies for not just our complete streets projects that we've been funding, but also other transportation projects as they come up so that we can really see the benefits of those investments. This includes the grant funding that we provide to our local government partners for various transportation planning activities. And this would also include an update to the Safe Streets Pinellas plan. While it was updated or developed and adopted just a few years ago, that data is already quite old, and we'd like to update the plan with some newer data. Our fifth task is the Transportation Improvement Program. This is 100% in-house. This is just staff time to develop your priority lists, develop the work planning documents, coordination with FDOT on the projects that go into the plan. So 100% funding for our personnel costs. And then in green, you'll see added an annual state of the TIP. And that's, I think, going to be the subject of a later topic on public outreach. We'd like to work on ways to be a bit more transparent about the projects that are coming soon, and we can get them back in front of the public so they don't seem to appear kind of out of nowhere and surprise everyone. Our long-range transportation plan, this is Advantage Pinellas. You'll see right now it's 100% personnel costs. There will be some additional consultant dollars in here. We will be adopting the plan this fall. So we'll have some consultant support to help us develop the final documentation. But generally, after the fall and the adoption, it'll mostly be staff time to make sure the plan stays updated. We have to do consistency with federal documents. Next month, you're actually going to get a modification to the plan. So there's staff time involved in putting together all that documentation, and then some travel expenses on that as well. Oh, is there a... I don't know, Madam Chair, if you'd like to take any questions now or wait till the end.
Does anyone have any questions or comments at this point? Commissioner Albritton?
Yeah, I've been watching the slides change and everything. I don't understand what the numbers on the pie chart are.
Oh, I'm sorry. Those coordinate with the task numbers that they're in your packet. 1.1 is administration.
Gotcha.
Sorry.
Okay.
And now we're on 6.
Might have been a percentage, and I was going, they don't add up.
Task 7 is our regional activities. This is time that we spend as staff supporting the Suncoast Transportation Planning Alliance, the MPOAC, which many of you have attended with WIT. We work on regional modeling and sharing of data, and then we're also going to be working on a regional long-range transportation plan. This is overwhelmingly staff time. However, we do provide a few $1,000s each year towards a joint planning product that each of the MPOs in the region contribute to, but that is covered under a different task. Our special projects, in the past, we've done the Gateway Master Plan, a Vision for US 19, the TEAL study. Moving forward for the next couple of years, we really want to get to the implementation of the Gateway Area Master Plan. So we're going to be doing an assessment of travel after the Gateway Expressway opens to see how the opening of that roadway really impacts the traffic on the lanes underneath, particularly Ulmerton Road and the Roosevelt Corridor and US 19. And then we're going to be also looking at the transportation and the land uses in that area to see how they're impacted by those changes in travel as well. For US 19, we will be having a conversation with you, I believe, next month on the Northern Corridor to have a nice little chat about whether the future should look at interchanges or whether it should focus on maybe a viaduct concept. So there'll be some staff time and probably some consultant time involved in that as well. And so that's why you'll see a pretty even split here between personnel and consultant on this one. This is, I had mentioned with the Suncoast Transportation Planning Alliance, each of the MPOs contributes $5,000. Ford Pinellas is the recipient of those funds, and we manage the projects on behalf of the region. So that's where you'll see the $60,000 totally for consultant work. That's just because those funds are coming to us and they'll be going out through us. We're currently managing the regional needs assessment, and we'll be pivoting towards the regional long-range transportation plan once that is done. And this right here, this is a brand new task for our region. As we move forward with the exploration of a regional MPO, we thought it was really important that we document how much is being spent on all of the work that's going into this. So we're creating a new task, and it's 100% personnel costs at this time. If the region were to receive funding to help us assist with the task, this is where it would get added into as consultant support. But for now, we just looked at a portion of my time and Whit's time to come up with an estimate of how much we think we might spend on this. We really didn't want to get 2 years down the road and then have someone say, well, how much did it cost for you to look into creating a regional MPO? And then we didn't have a number. So this will allow us to track a number. And the Hillsborough TPO and Pasco MPO are also creating a very similar task so that they can track as well. So our next steps is we're going to be transmitting this information up to the state, and then we'll bring it back to you for final review in May. And with that, I'll take any questions that you may have.
Questions? Thoughts? Comments? Wow.
Trust us completely.
Perfect.
Yes. This is an action item because we're transmitting the draft, and then it'll come back for final approval in May. I would move approval.
Thank you.
Do we have a second?
Madam Chair, for the record, there aren't any citizens wishing to speak on this item.
Thank you.
Shocker. Is my mic on? Sorry.
Okay. It's been moved and seconded. All those in favor, please designate by saying aye. Aye. And I would just like to add that going forward, the issue of the regional MPO is going to gather more steam and more conversation, and I encourage you to become active and involved in how this all moves forward so that at some point on in the future, you're all not looking back going, oh my God, what were we thinking? What were we doing? Do you know what I mean? Because this is a really big deal. And correct me if I'm wrong, Whit, it really sets the stage for how we move forward with transportation, public transportation, and even air and sea for the next few decades. So it's really important, and it's important for you to be engaged, I think. Okay, I'm off my soapbox now. We are on
Director's report.
the director's report.
Okay, I'll close it out. I've got a couple items I want to bring to you. Some I've already talked about a little bit. Under the spotlight emphasis area, just wanted to let you all know that I had a meeting recently with the Florida Department of Transportation to talk about the Gulf to Bay and Belcher intersection, which is a county study, project development and environmental study, looking at different options for addressing that traffic bottleneck. And the county has asked the Department of Transportation to complete the PD&E and then undertake the next phase of the project. So those conversations are ongoing, and I've been invited to a future meeting later this month between the county and the department to just be part of that conversation. And what I've asked the department to consider is looking at the entire corridor and not just looking at the intersection, because I do think that when you think about an interchange at Gulf to Bay and Belcher, or you think about other innovative intersection treatments that could happen there, you've got downstream impacts on Gulf to Bay that you need to be mindful of. You don't want to just shift the problem to Hercules or Keene or some other part of the road. You also want to make sure that you're thinking about other needs in the corridor beyond just that one choke point. I've gotten requests over the years, and I'm hearing again recently from the city of Clearwater and the chamber about having some sort of transit service from the beach to Tampa International Airport. We've also talked about ways to enhance connectivity between downtown and the beach. And that whole corridor has a lot of safety issues. So we will be continuing that conversation about maybe there's a corridor study that's coming on that as well. But I'm glad to be part of that conversation. On the waterborne transportation service, I was at the St. Pete Chamber yesterday, and they had a really good discussion. They are forming Urban Land Institute panel to begin looking at waterborne service that might connect St. Pete to South Hillsborough County, the Apollo Beach area, because there's a large workforce over there that can't really get to St. Pete very easily and can't really even get into downtown Tampa very easily or get to McDill very easily. So water transportation is a viable option in that corridor. And as that panel takes shape, they're currently scoping it. We've been in conversation with a consultant that can help us maybe with a market demand analysis for waterborne service. And we will be looking, as that gets moving forward, to maybe reconvening the Waterborne Committee as well at some point, probably later in the year. In the meantime, we have that $655,000 grant. I had a conversation with the county administrator to see if we can get the county's portion to help pay for a marketing aspect of the Clearwater Ferry. And I think there was some receptiveness to that, certainly some legal hurdles have been cleared for that to happen if it's marketing based, and that is an eligible expense for the operating costs. So stay tuned on working through that. PSTA is also working through their procurement process for that grant. I'll probably have more of an update at your April meeting on that one. And then I did want to just talk about the next steps for the US 1934th Street. I think I've covered most everything there. We did, I think, follow all the procedures at the time, but as I have learned, not everybody is engaged when we're making the decision to move forward with the transportation project, no matter how hard we try. So we do need to think about some ways to continue to keep people involved. I think our challenge is that we have so many projects in the Transportation Improvement Program. Selecting which ones and how to do that supplemental engagement once they're funded and once they're working through the work program is a little bit of a challenge for us because we've already pivoted to the next priority list and defining projects that need to go into the new work program. So that's something that I want to have a conversation with you all about, and I'll get to that in a minute. But I did want to just make sure you were all aware of the upcoming town hall meeting and how we're going to be continuing the conversation over 34th Street. Are there any further questions about 34th Street, or did we cover it pretty well earlier? Feels like we've covered it. Okay. All right, good. The next item I want to bring to your attention is we've summarized in your packet the results of your exercise at the February workshop. And I'm not going to dwell on the findings, but you all were asked to identify 1 through 6, where you would like to see dollars spent on transportation in Pinellas County. I think it's interesting that premium transit ended up being number 1. I know that wasn't everybody's number 1, but that was the consensus. And then there was support for all of these different modes. So that's our fun challenge is how do we balance with the limited resources we have? And then you can see the breakdown of those responses in here. So I just wanted to have that for the record. And your responses are pretty consistent with what we've heard from the public in the statistically valid survey. When we ask people what they want to see happen, based on the apportionment of population, they tend to follow the same types of things that you've seen. Maybe get a little bit more support for technology in some of the public surveys. I think people are always just enamored by technology. Any questions on that summary in your packet? Again, it's just guidance for us, something that we can go back and hang our hat on, saying this is what we heard, and try to keep that reflection going. The next item, if I may, is a legislative update, and in your packet is a legislative update as of a day or two before the end of session. Linda has given me a summary here. And I'm not going to go through all these details. If you have questions about specific bills, you can let me know. I think it was a mixed bag this session. We had some good and we had some bad. I count the good, the fact that the MPO bill that was working its way through the legislature failed. It didn't gain enough traction. And so some of the provisions that really restricted MPOs and put unfunded mandates on us didn't happen. I suspect some of those will come back. But I think, like Representative Cheney's language on lane elimination for transit found its way into the transportation bill that now affects all transit agencies statewide. If they want to do a lane repurposing for transit, they need I believe it's a supermajority or a 3/4 majority of their board to approve that project. So now that not just something that would apply to PSTA, it would apply statewide. There was a cap placed on the amount of funds that can go towards transit. I do have some concerns about that, but there are some carve-outs. So if we can get supermajority support of the county commission, if it's a project that maintains or enhances the level of service on the state highway system, and it's a rail or bus rapid transit project, then that also doesn't count towards the cap. So there was some concessions, I think, made in that bill that weren't all bad. There is some new language on lane repurposing in the transportation bill that requires most of what we were already doing, but you have to conduct a traffic study, which we do. You have to evaluate the impacts on parallel roadways, which we do. You have to notify all affected property owners and local governments 180 days in advance. And St. Pete did that for the 34th Street project. So these are things that we're already doing generally, but it's good to have a little more guidance in the system. And then we have to have a public meeting 30 days in advance of those projects. The DOT mission has changed from improving travel choices to ensure mobility, to promoting the efficient movement of people and goods, and preserving Florida's quality of life. So I've always hung my hat on that improving travel choices, so it'll be a little bit different, but I think everything we do still fits under that umbrella. And I'll not get into all those details there. There was a bill that passed on alternative mobility funding systems that we'll have to take into account for our impact fee update. The violations against vulnerable road users, that also passed. So there have been fines that have been increased and suspension of driver's license. So that's good news. Finally, we've got a little bit of an increase in criminal penalties for those involving bodily injury or death. Now that's assuming that people get charged with the crime. Electric vehicle charging stations was a preemption. So only the state can now do that. Local governments can't put rules forward for electric vehicle charging stations. And let's see, traffic and pedestrian safety. We had a bill that failed that would have, again, forced us to remove a lot of the rectangular rapid flashing beacons. So we're glad that that failed. I think we'll see an attack on that just about every year. And I think those are the main ones I wanted to cover, unless anybody has any questions. And Mayor Will, I know you were very engaged in the vacation rental bill. Do you want to say just real briefly something about your disappointment with that bill that you shared with me beforehand, if you're comfortable?
I can do that. Yes, you mentioned preemption. The vacation rental bill is another preemption. Whether you're for vacation rentals or not, that's a zoning and land use decision that is up to the residents of that community to make those decisions. That ability to make that decision and have your residents' voice be heard has been taken away, and that power has now been centralized to Tallahassee.
In a nutshell.
Yeah.
I failed to mention the affordable housing bill, which is a big one for us. Last year there was a landmark Live Local Act, you may remember. And at one point, we had some language that took industrial out of that bill as a refinement. That ended up staying in the bill. And this really is kind of a doubling down of the Live Local Act. It allows for qualifying developments to be built with the highest allowable density or 150% of highest allowable floor area ratio standard in the jurisdiction. The statute currently only identifies density. So that's an expansion. It now requires parking standards to be reduced for qualifying developments located within half a mile of a major transportation hub or in a designated transit-oriented area. That's a good provision, so we're all for that. That'll help. The bills originally proposed to delete industrial from eligible land uses, but those were removed due to the opposition from the real estate industry. So I wanted to make sure I covered that, and that's all I have on that.
Anything else?
Let me, if I can, just go to the policy discussion on public engagement, and then I think I'll wrap up from there. As I mentioned, we are curious of any direction this board can provide of what you would like to see a Forward Pinellas policy look like. Currently, we do a lot of outreach as we're developing projects. One of our grant programs for Complete Streets requires that we demonstrate local support if you apply for the grant. We give our planning funds to help communities come up with consensus on what to do for the project. So there's usually a ton of outreach and engagement associated with defining the project. Then we get the project funded and put in our work program, and we kind of move on to the next set of projects. I don't want to just single out complete streets projects or safety projects or bicycle pedestrian projects or transit projects because we've had many property owners on the US 19 issue not happy about some of the things we were doing with US 19. We've had other people concerned about I-275 and needing noise walls and things like that. So every transportation project's going to have probably somebody out there who's not happy. What can we do? What does this board see a policy going forward consisting of? And I'd just like to open it up and see if you would like to share any thoughts that we would include in something that would go beyond what's already in our public participation plan.
Commissioner Eggers?
Yeah, so I think there's two parts to this. One is our part that we say we do everything we can to reach out. There's the other part, which is on the list, the receiving end, and are people listening? And I met with a gentleman this week, and we talked about him getting involved, and he's married, has 3 kids, coaching Little League, works all day, comes home, gets kids ready for bed, and then off, So all these public hearings that we so eloquently put together, and I mean that seriously, not snidely at all, go on deaf ears. He had nothing, no knowledge of anything happening. And so on a very small level of comparison, a previous executive assistant that I had put together an email database for specific geographic areas of North County, as an example. And we asked, if you're in this area or other topics, what other topics would you like us to include you in an email? So I think there's a way, and I'm not smart enough to know what it is, but that we can gather emails from people that want to engage in certain topics so that they're getting information straight to their email. At 9 o'clock at night, they're sitting down and going through their emails, and they see a MPO transportation email. And it's like, oh, that they would never have seen otherwise. And I know it's cumbersome process, but if you want people to actually listen to what we're talking about and engage, I think that's the only way we're going to do it going forward. I'm not saying it's going to happen overnight, and that little piece that I'm talking about was small in comparison, and your email could show up on many subject matters, and then other ones you don't really care to get all these other subject matters, so don't bother me with those. I just think people want to get engaged and want to be educated, want to be involved, and there's not a method to do that as far as, realistic methods. So just thoughts about maybe being more targeted.
Yeah.
So is what you're talking about, Commissioner, something along the lines of developing a social media campaign?
Yeah, it would be that, so that people could sign up their email under topics that they want to hear about directly from MPO, directly from the county, directly from St. Petersburg on, transit issues. I want to hear all about that, or, that kind of thing. And then people are plugging in, they're choosing who they want, what topics they want to hear about. And we can still do our normal thing, but then we're targeting people with information that they're interested in, and you're going to get some real good feedback. It may be helpful in some cases to your cause, and it may be hurtful to your cause, but at least we're getting that on the front end more so than down the road.
Well, we want our projects to be supported, but we also want them to be understood.
Yeah, no.
We are capturing emails through Advantage Pinellas, our outreach campaign and our challenge that we're asking people, and they can win prizes. So they have to register and they have to submit their email as part of that. So that could be, we may be building that database now as you speak.
I think there's a marketing effort that says we're moving in this direction, Pinellas County and all of its cities. And we'll be contacting you a number of ways to get your engagement and sign up for different topics. So anyway, whatever. Thank you.
Yes, please.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Actually, in the city of Oldsmar early last year, we adopted a public engagement policy that I had proposed. And more or less the core framework of that is there's an organization out there called the International Association of Public Participation. And they have a spectrum that helps you kind of define the framework of how, at what point you get people involved. I'll just kind of highlight it briefly, but basically there's 5 levels from inform to consult to involve to collaborate to empower. So informing is you're just getting information out there, letting people know what's going on. And then as you move through that spectrum to empower, ultimately that's like if something were to go to a referendum type thing. So you don't typically see that too much as putting the power in the people's hands as it relates to issues with this body. But basically what we do at the city is for every project or agenda item that comes up, it's what is the level of public participation that applies to this project or this phase or subsection of the project. So it's been really fruitful for us thus far to get that out there. And that being one idea of people sign up for it, well, that's just one element of, well, are they getting informed or are we actually wanting feedback from them? So it's been a really productive thing thus far, and we'd be happy to help, get our city manager involved and share what has been done because even with staff, they basically have worksheets to say, well, as this project is in its infancy, what is our expected public engagement going forward?
That's a great suggestion, actually. I
Be
like
happy to
that
share
a
that.
lot. Anyone else over here? Anybody? Well, I have a little thought, and I'm not sure if it belongs in this agency or somewhere else, but if you pay attention to the vehicles that are on the road and the new and evolving electric vehicles that are out there, what I don't see, I see a large number of new hybrids, electric vehicles, et cetera. But what I don't see are the electric charging stations that you need to make that a really viable option in our county and in our region. And I'm really curious about what that might look like to develop a strategy to ensure that we have those stations to meet the needs. I don't even know where to begin with that.
Right.
But having driven across the country in my own electric vehicle, I know that's really important to know where those charging stations are.
Yeah, that's something the Florida Department of Transportation is working on, and now it's only up to the state to figure that out, but the Largo city manager had a real interest in that too. So we'll continue to have those conversations.
Good to know. I just think we need to keep talking about it and doing our part to make sure that we're part of the solution.
Well, what we'll do is we'll work on a policy and bring that back to you for consideration in the next couple of months. And, hopefully we'll continue to kind of build that understanding and engagement of what we do so that people can be informed and they can feel empowered to help influence decisions. I want to be real clear, Ford Pinellas, most of the projects that we advance are brought to us upon request by local government, or they come from the Florida Department of Transportation. We're not sitting back in our offices hatching up ideas of how we're going to impose this project on the community. It may seem like that sometimes, But I think all these projects begin from a vote of a local body saying, yes, let's proceed with something here and let's see if we can get some federal or state funding for it. And then we end up being the conduit for all that. And, I think my biggest challenge right now is maintaining that level of partnership with the local government, whoever it is, as elections change, as boards change, as neighborhood boards change, because of the length of time it takes. And we've got to be mindful of the resource constraints we have. We've got to be mindful of our partners who may be delivering the project and what they're comfortable with. So we'll have conversations with the county, we'll have conversations with the state DOT, with PSTA and others, and we'll see if we can craft a policy that is minimally invasive, but also maximally effective, and go from there and see if you all agree.
Commissioner Eggers?
Yeah, just a couple things. First of all, you know what they do to messengers sometimes.
I know.
And that's what the MPO is.
Yeah.
Sometimes we take.
I need to get a new jacket that's got some flak resistant
Just
material.
a couple things. First, on lane repurposing, I'm sure, and these are conversations you've had in the last half hour or so, there's a definition on what lane repurposing is. If you could just send that to us. I'd like to know what that means. Lane elimination is pretty clear. Lane repurposing, I'd just like to understand what that means. I really totally agree on the State Road 60 corridor study. I mean, they're doing it on 580. State Road 60 has a lot more complications and dynamics down there. My gosh, I mean, you just take a segment from Northeast Coachman to 19. That area is it's just crazy what goes on in that area. So beach traffic and on. So, and then the only other thing is, and I do this at the county commission sometime. When I bring it up, but I just like somewhere along the way, Mr. Bike User, but to have the discussion about the policy change that has occurred on the trail in Pinellas County, and the problems that I'm hearing growingly about it, and it comes down as simple as this: that people are being passed by very, very fast bicycles blindly, because you're being forced to walk on the right with the new bikes that fly around at 30 miles an hour, and bikes that can go 20 on their own, and people that are walking their kid in a stroller, or a senior that's in a wheelchair. They're all in the same side anymore. So that's the first problem. And then the second one is where every once in a while we have a walking area that's separate from then you have to crisscross back over to become on the right side again. I can just count, number is growing on the number of people that are having encounters. Bicyclists, fast driving, whatever, are getting more aggressive about people. They're on the trail enjoying the afternoon, and they're like being yelled at because they're not in their proper lane. And the trail is becoming, instead of a place of walking and enjoyment and relaxation and exercise, almost like a minor roadway. Excuse me? Yeah, it is a raceway in some cases. And I just think we just have to, and people, and me being stubborn as I am, I continue to walk the old way. And so now, the walkers didn't see me. We're fine. The bicyclists are coming at me going, wait, what's going on? I'm not intentionally trying to confuse, but I feel much more comfortable facing the bicyclists. When I'm on a busy road, even like Drew Street, take that for an extreme, I would never walk on the side with the traffic coming at me from behind. That's what you're doing on the trail every day. So anyway, I'd like to have that discussion somewhere
David,
along the way.
You mentioned the word policy change. Yeah. What were you referring to? Because who governs the policy on the trail? I don't even know that.
That's kind of what I'm asking. The county.
Oh, we do?
Yeah, yeah. We get involved.
I didn't even know
that.
that.
And we get input from the MPO sometimes on it. So I just want to know where that conversation needs. And if you tell me it has to take place at the county, we'll do it at the county. Yeah.
Good to know. Yeah, I think it's
I
a
agree.
conversation worth having, because I've just learned something here in the last 5 minutes that I didn't even know. And I used to live on the trail, and I don't live far from it right now, but it is, it used to be quiet and serene and lovely, and
Not
now
so
it's
much.
not so much.
Now, the electric bikes or the hybrid, which are great for some of our older folks that really need that assistance, and you don't want to take that away, but you've got a lot of people who are not really using it for that. It's a race course. And I just watched a kid the other day. I don't know, he couldn't have been more than 15 or 16. He had to have been going, I don't know what, but it was really fast. But Dave, I did want to let you know that in Dunedin, Whit and his team have been working with us on our little section, because you know it's the busiest. And there are some areas that we're looking, no, it's in the 5-year plans, you know how that goes. But we are working on separating some of that, because it is the busiest area and there are a ton of walkers. So just know we have been working with Forward Pinellas to address that piece, but it doesn't address it everywhere.
Yeah, it doesn't. And really, it's just simply about feeling comfortable and safe. And it's just, it's being taken over. I mean, I'm seeing all kinds of, bicycles that are now getting, I saw a 4-wheel bicycle the other day. It's probably the same dimensions as a golf cart with people that are biking. And they're taking up a whole bunch. Now, that's a bicyclist, but, so it's like, and there's electric, and there's that, and so the golf carts, are they next? I mean, so I just think we have to be thinking, anyway. I don't know if that happens here, or if it happens at the county discussion, but.
Well, I mean, we can't do it without the county, but we certainly will continue to coordinate and see what we can bring back. Yep.
Madam Chair, if I may interject, that Forward Pinellas staff and county staff, Public Works and Parks have a meeting next Tuesday to address exactly what Commissioner Eggers is speaking about.
Perfect. That's really great to know. Can we get that report when we have our next meeting with?
Sure can.
Commissioner Scott, you had something to add?
Yes, thank you, Madam Chair. I want to say it was a year or so ago that we amended county ordinance to allow e-bikes on the trail. I want to say, I'm pretty sure we did that. I know we had a presentation on it. I remember that, and the thought was how do you? They're ubiquitous. They're everywhere. So how do you not allow them on the trail? But it's definitely creating some problems.
And some of it comes from the state too. They tell us what we can and can't do on the trail. And again, sometimes it's good. Sometimes it's not so good. But they override. Because I remember when the vehicles that you stand on. And go, that was not allowed. Right. Because that was that first motorized vehicle that the state said, I believe it was the state said, we must allow them on the trail.
So there was a year or two ago in the legislature, some statutory change that defined classes of e-bikes and what was allowable. And then it was up to local governments to, they allowed local governments to impose some additional restrictions. The county had a workshop with the BCC and ultimately decided to conform to the state statutes and not restrict them. But some of our communities, particularly the beach communities, have restricted e-bike usage on the sand and on the sidewalks, I believe, in St. Pete Beach, and in some cases on some local streets. But particularly, we had a e-bike fatality on Gulf Boulevard in Madeira Beach a couple of years ago. And you're really vulnerable riding an e-bike on a sidewalk because you're going faster and you're not seen. Nobody is seen well on a sidewalk, so that's a whole set of issues there. We're happy to bring something back to the board, but I do want to make sure we're not getting out in front of the county and other partners on this.
Are we involved the county in all of this? That'd be great.
Okay, thanks.
Okay, County Commissioner.
Okay. Commissioner Scott?
I'm good, Madam Chair.
Oh, anyone else? Anybody? No? Well, do we have any upcoming events or informational items with?
Yeah, we do up here. It's in your agenda packet on upcoming events. Just to highlight, informational items. We have the MPOAC Weekend Institute. Thank you for those who just did that in Orlando. My condolences for your I-4 journey. April 6th is the Targeted Enforcement Day on the trails, so maybe we'll be targeting some of those faster-moving bicyclists. The TMA Leadership Group is May 17th. I stand corrected. I had the wrong date earlier. The Suncoast TPA is meeting May 17th, right after the TMA Leadership Group meeting. And then there is another training opportunity for elected officials on May 17th and 18th. And Commissioner Scott pointed out that he and Councilmember Reed were at the one in Orlando, and there were only 9 or 10 people there.
There's only 9.
Yeah.
Only 9 of us there, yeah.
So I hope the one in Tampa is a little better attended, but if you are interested and available, there may be some additional seats. And the good news is it's not the last training opportunity for the MPOAC. They survived at least another year.
Well, Pinellas had the majority there. So.
Well, I hope you dominated.
Yeah, we did. Yeah, we did.
Oh, did you learn anything?
Yeah, it was very interesting. It actually was it was worthwhile. Definitely was, yeah. I enjoyed it.
Okay, well then if there's nothing else for the good of the order, we are adjourned. Thank you, everyone.